So, like I said, that was hopeful that we could make decisions tonight as to what our individual responsibilities are in crafting a report. Haley told us last time that we shouldn't worry about it being a low level, a high, remain at high level. Um, I almost interpret that as waving your wand over this report, and but
Roger, that I have to object to that, Roger. It's not asking you to just wave your wand over the report, but I think the role of CBRC is not to go through every line item and find like the missing clarinets. The role of CBRC is to, and you've been on the committee for a long time, you know this, to see does the budget align with the board goals and values from your perspective. So it's not to dive into each line item, but to look at the broader brushstrokes of, we're investing in social workers. Do you feel like that helps us meet our goals? We're investing in these things. Do you feel like that's in alignment with what we've said we've done? And that's the difference for me of the higher level view versus trying to get into line items. And so it wasn't saying I want you to just wave your magic wand over it and say the budget's great. I really value the work of CBRC. I was on it for 2 years. So that's important to me that that's not mischaracterized.
Lisa, you had provided us a draft based on our previous reports. Maybe you might chime in at this point and tell us about how far you've successfully gotten into the 600-page document that we were presented.
Well, I think going back to what I just said, it's, I kind of went back to what is the focus of our review, and it's the 4 goals, right? And kind of the underlying themes from that. And that's how I've been trying to go through the document. And I know I've emailed Jordan asking some follow-up questions, and then, watching the map presentation to figure out, where are we falling behind on our goals, and then is the board focusing on that in 22, 23. And so I feel like it's really hard to follow that trail and keep digging and trying to affirm that that's happening. So I'm kind of still in the review process, and I was hoping tonight, like, the part of our discussion is really, last year I think we indicated that of the 4 goals, we believe the 5th grade math goal is most for not being met. And so I'm curious if, based on the map assessment, to me it seems like really middle school is where we're losing ground, if I followed the map presentation correctly, and particularly for specific groups of students. And so again, like, maybe that's a discussion point for tonight of, like, of the 4 goals, what do we feel is most at risk of not being met, and then is the board addressing that? And then on racial equity and social justice, again, like, where in the document can we find teacher retention, teacher recruitment that meets the goals in that, as well as one of my questions to Jordan was on equity allocation. And right now in the book, it's by school, so you really have to go school by school to follow what's happening. And I remembered from last year there was a summary by school, so I was talking to Jordan about that was very helpful. And so again, like, that's just kind of my thought process in going through this, of kind of going through the document from last year as a guide, but kind of digging into this year's budget. So that's kind of where I've ended up. And so I'd be interested to hear where your kind of other thoughts of how people are tracking and digging into the budget proposal.
Renee, do you have thoughts that you want to share with us? You need to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Mm.
You're signed into two things, aren't you, Renee?
Yeah. Okay. Just a minute. Okay. So I'm confused because I thought we were going to be at the work session. The board meeting is having a work session right now, correct? The board's having a work session?
Tomorrow.
Okay, I keep getting these notices. Isn't today the 3rd?
This is the 3rd.
So this is,
Okay,
it might just
so
be a clarification. It might just be a wording thing. So we talked in the last meeting about having a CBRC work session where you all would just work on the reports themselves. And then there's a board work session relating to the budget tomorrow.
Okay, I'm just telling you, I am looking at this email from Kara, and it says
Kara.
Public School District Public Meeting Notice. Date, May 3rd, 2022, 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. The meeting will be streamed under the provision. So they're saying it's tonight.
Yeah, that's the CBRC. That's what we're doing right now.
This is the public meeting.
Yeah, so this is also a public notice, like public meeting.
Oh, I didn't know we were public notice.
Yes, Renee, everybody's been hearing you. Yeah, sorry, I think it's just a wording thing. Maybe we shouldn't have called it a work.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
And so, Renee, so you know, there is a work session of the board tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And then on Thursday night, CBRC meets again.
Yeah.
At 5 o'clock.
I have all the dates. I just thought we were at a board meeting. I have all the dates. Okay, got it.
So now I'm asking you if you want to share anything about your current review status of the budget document.
Well, I want to know, and I do apologize because I know Jordan sent me a whole lot of stuff, so I don't know which questions were answered. So I just have, right now, I have more questions. Has the question been answered about, so they laid off 88 teachers. They're saying there are no layoffs. I'm sorry, there are 88 teachers less because of retirement, attrition, whatever. There are 88 teachers that are gone. So we keep hearing that they're not laying off any teachers, but my question is, are they replacing the 88 people who aren't coming back next year? So that's a question I have.
No, the answer to that is no. There will be 88 fewer spots for teachers next year as opposed to this year.
And is it because of the account again? The count of the students?
Yes.
So I don't understand, and I haven't done the math, and I don't even know if I could do the math because I don't know how many students we have still today. But so when we talk about average class size, and we know that average class size, I'm thinking if they're saying average class size, they're not using the outliers, like all those classes that are 10 or less students. So when they talk about average class size, what is the maximum class size? And again, Jordan may have
said that information.
Pardon? Yeah, he may have.
I think that information is being released tomorrow, Renee. I think that information is being released tomorrow.
Okay. Because I did read. Okay. So, and then I heard Roger talk about the custodians, and do we know? So we are going to put in our report that we think they should have better salary. The custodians and the nutrition services people.
Well, I had asked the question about whether or not we had the capability of reopening collective bargaining agreements. I got the sense that we're going to get a legal counsel report that says, well, they're on a regular cycle and so on. But I would be willing to bet that we're the district to inform our collective bargaining units that the district wants to reopen them with the purpose of raising the hourly salary, and that item only, and that all other items are fall in the regular negotiation cycle. That most bargaining units would be willing to do that. My
Roger.
point has been, but that hasn't been answered, at least my reading of the chat of the question thing. And
Yeah, so
point,
I just wanted to quickly say too that that question has an answer now. I'm going to put it in the Q&A document shortly.
Okay.
Do you know what the answer is?
Yeah, it's the district is preparing to enter into negotiations with PAT and currently engaged with the SEIU. However, if CBA's collective bargaining agreements needed to be reopened, they would do so based on respective CBA agreed upon conditions. The answer goes on, but I'll paste that in the Q&A document here in just a little bit.
Okay. Well, the frustration.
Sorry, it wasn't in there already. There's some of these are just now getting answered.
Okay. The frustration, of course, has been custodians there's been a shortage of them for not just it goes pre-COVID, and COVID is the constant excuse that we hear and so on. But Franklin, where I volunteer, has never been allocated its promised number. When I sat on the DAG, we were promised 12. Then we were informed it would be 8. We continue to suffer with only 2. So, and then our facility gets used on the weekend, so custodians end up working 7-day weeks.
But I guess kind of coming back to the start of this, of like, our objective in going through this is not to focus on that per se, other than we could make an observation or a recommendation that in attempting to reach the goals and student performance related to having food service and being able to maintain the buildings and adequately paying those employees, that's all we can say, right? Like I just want to make sure we're focusing in on the stuff we can impact, and that we don't spend too much time talking through this if it's not something that we can impact, other than to say this is an observation of ours.
I do think
Right.
it's a fair observation to make as to whether or not the district is maintaining its promises that made to the public, going to for bonds or for levies or whatever. And so that's where I come from. But if the others don't agree, then that's fine. Abide by the majority of what they want to. Overall, my general impression is that the district is doing an admirable job of meeting the goals and the vision, the strategic plan as adopted, and God knows I don't want to reopen whether any of those elements are good or bad. They've already been established and so on. So.
Just for the sake of kind of keeping our thoughts and everything organized and considering, we got to move into actually working on this report pretty quickly. And by we, I mean you. I'm not touching this report, so everybody knows. But just thinking like, Alexander and I are already taking notes. We're happy to take notes on certain topics you want to bring up in this report. Like Lisa was saying, you could mention that you feel like custodial staff need to get paid more. There's different areas that you could be mentioning. We're happy to jot those down. And then I do think we should focus tonight. I'm just going to throw it out there. I think we should focus on who's going to do what in regards to this report. And then, of course, any more questions that you have so that we can write them down and get those answered. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, let me throw out that I'm willing to make the report or to the board about the local option levy. And I would ask Lisa to head up the team that reports on the budget document. I had mentioned to Parker the other night at board meeting that that I think it would be well for us to incorporate our students that have participated this year on CBRC in rendering portions of the report. And he seemed quite intrigued with that, but I'm disappointed that he's not attending tonight. Not all of our students have been faithful attendees. Hobbs has been a regular attendee and so on. Maybe he would be willing to join in the report in some manner and so on. But what are some of the other people's thoughts? Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the local option levy. I drafted that based on everything that was presented. And if anybody has any comments on it, they can add it to the document. But otherwise, that should be finalized. I can finalize that and it's ready to go. So there's not, other than people just looking behind me, there's nothing left that needs to be.
Yeah, I'm merely pointing out that on the 17th, when we make a report, that I'd be glad to deliver the report on the local option levy.
Gotcha.
So I'm not. Well, I did ask you a question earlier about whether there's a difference in calculation between average salary and mean salary, but we'll see what answers we get on that, because if, as I pointed out, that we report that our calculations are X number of teachers are funded by the levy, but based on a salary of and benefits of 116,000, whether that's the majority of our teachers or, what's the mean, in other words. An average might be dangerous to report, so and it might be the best way to report it. I don't know. That's so behind my question.
Okay. So then focusing in on the budget document itself and our observations and recommendations, opening it up to the group here. When I looked at it before, I kind of thought that there could be someone that takes on kind of the background and context. And then we have a group focusing on observations and then a group focusing on recommendations, or it's really to hone in by topic of people looking at kind of how does the budget reflect the goals, and then kind of the racial equity and social justice piece. And so maybe Hobbs or Alona or Renee can comment on how we think best to break this up.
I'll take observations on the justice piece.
Can you say the sections again that you're thinking of for that piece?
Yeah, the way the document, and this is just from last year, is kind of a background overview, our purpose, and then it's observations. And so it's like, you know, did the board, does the budget reflect the goals? We made some observations on racial equity and social justice, investing in historically underserved students, the equity allocation, you know, kind of focusing in on class size, central, you know, central services was mentioned last year as an issue. And then lastly, there's a recommendation section. So really it's like an introduction, observations, and then recommendations, Alana. So basically three sections.
And how many people do we want on each of those?
If I look at this, I think the background and purpose is one person, and I could probably just take care of that piece of it. I think observations and recommendations is really where we should focus on 2 or 3 people on each, or on both. It could be that that as you're going through it, you're making observations and what the recommendations are.
So we have the section observations, which has 7 parts. Like, can we just pick parts of the observations?
Yeah, I think some of it's going through and seeing if it's relevant to this year, right? Because this is based on last year, and some things may or may not apply to this year.
Well, racial equity and social justice applies to this year.
Yes.
Are we squarely focused on investing in historically underserved students? Applies to this year.
Yes.
And the equity allocation of 8% of the staffing model has held blah, blah, blah. That applies to this year because we are talking about staffing and recruiting and retaining teachers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. To me, number 2, 3, and 4 definitely apply to this year, I think.
Yep.
I'd be interested in working on the observations. And I'm happy to help with recommendations as well.
I'll just say from like something that I'm thinking about is like definitely important for somebody to write out the background and purpose, maybe just one person, and then it can just be reviewed and edited. The context could be similar to that, but I feel like the observations and recommendations are going to be all of you, you know, because I think you all have observations and feedback from the budget. And maybe it's just a matter of like, you each write down what your observations are, and then we just kind of collect them together. But I'm just throwing that out there. And then the recommendations, it does seem like, Lisa, maybe you know this, it seems like the recommendations are built off of what the observations were. Is that right?
Yes. And so, I think it's good though if like Renee and Lona want to take the lead on it, and then have other people respond and comments that actually might flow better, and I'm definitely not putting all the work on you at all. Just more, maybe if they'd be willing to take the lead, but then the rest of us can contribute and respond and add. And then again, I'm happy to kind of take on the introduction piece because that's fairly easy in the closing remarks and kind of formulate it, and I'll be happy to respond or comment on whatever. But Renee, kind of going back to your review of the observations, I do think using last year's as your guide and kind of make edits as you go through of what's applicable and what's not would probably be the easiest way to to go about it for sure.
Okay, so so we would work on this and then send it to everybody, and we add people, and then people add or question us or whatever, edit.
Yeah, if you think that's the best way to do it. And we also have, like, our next session on Thursday could be that as everybody looks through these observations and recommendations, we come prepared to talk through them, and I mean, that could be the other way to do it. Just
okay. So
the question becomes, what kind of deadline do you want to put that into a format where we can make comments?
well, we're using the Google Docs because everybody should be working in there so that there's one master document.
But what deadline do you want to have to make comment? Is it going to be done by Thursday so we can begin to comment at that time, or are we talking? We have to finalize based on what Ailey told us last week. Notwithstanding, we have until the 17th to render a report. It has to be turned in on the 11th.
Yep, that's next Wednesday.
Yeah, so we've got a very short time frame.
And but I can write.
Okay, yeah, I know you can, and that's why I'm leaning on you guys.
I mean, I will do my part. So on the 5th, by the 5th, we have our observations, and so you're saying we're doing observations and recommendations? We're working on observations and recommendations. Is that what you were saying, Lisa?
Yeah, but I wonder if our goal for Thursday is to just focus on the observations, and then part of our discussion could be what are our recommendations coming out of those observations.
Okay.
I'm just thinking through, basically we have a day, right, to prepare, and so if it's maybe focusing in on the observations, and then our agenda for Thursday would be to talk through what the recommendations are. Or again, like, I don't know what other people think. I'm just trying to figure out what's the best process and having everybody contribute in some way.
So, okay, so I think that's a good idea. And then we have this template. So are we just going to write over the template, or are we going to save a copy of the template and then we each do our own thing? So what I can do is, I have a copy of the template. I make a copy of it. I write my little pieces for the 4, 5, and 6, or whatever I have an observation about, and then we bring that together instead of writing over this template that Jordan gave us. In other words, you would see my comment, and somebody else might have a comment on I don't know, number 3. I didn't, and we have our own comment, and we pull it together on the 5th, and then discuss our recommendation. Because I may have a comment about focus on investigating underserved students. It's different than Ilana's comment about it. Correct? Or I'm just asking for feedback, that's all.
Yeah, I think it could be, I guess this is where you kind of point, like, who's kind of the master owner of that probably wasn't the right word, sorry. Who is kind of the lead for this document so that everybody's comments get edited and put into one piece? Just from my use of Google Docs, and probably Hobbs has even better in Google Docs and sharing with groups, that everybody kind of puts things into the same document so that we all can follow the commentary. But if, let's say, Renee, you want to take on 2, 3, and 4,
Mm-hmm.
then you would edit those, and then people can add to it or make a comment on the side so that you can respond to those if we want to work in that manner. And then maybe someone is focusing on facilities and central services, and they can kind of edit the document to a point where they feel like people can comment on.
Okay. And then just on I'm trying to find my schedule for I'll be in California. I'm trying to look for my schedule. And then by the 5th, have it in the format that has smoothed out all the comments together. Is that what you're asking? I can't hear you.
Sorry, by the 5th, is that what you're saying?
So we're going to write on it, and then on the 5th, you want one person to make it smooth. That's what I'm hearing. Edit it so number 2 or number 3 is a nice, strong paragraph.
Yeah, if people have the time, or it's set after that. Yeah, I guess it's depending on what people have time for. But that ideally, that would be the way we go. But
okay. Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't think we have much choice. I like what Renee has outlined to do, and Lisa, if you'll take the responsibility of kind of being the executive editor and pulling it all together. We don't. I want to caution the group that come the 10th, when we take final action on our report, that if we leave too many strings undone until that meeting, I promise you, will go on and on and on and on, based on previous experiences. And I don't think anybody wants to do that. So
you're talking about the 5th, correct?
No, I want to do as you have outlined for the 5th. So our final meeting on the 10th is more one of blessing the final report as
Okay.
we'll render it. It has to be submitted the very next day so the board has ample time to read it and all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, I'm trying to avoid us having an 8-hour meeting on the 10th to try to pull all let's do as much editing as possible and have it smoothed out on the 5th.
Okay.
I have a question, and I also have to head out pretty soon to go facilitate a debate. But I am curious if that also means then folks that are not focusing. Actually, excuse me, let me clarify. So it's not just Renee and I that are working on the observations before Thursday. Now everyone is doing that, correct?
You and Renee are taking the first crack of observations. The rest of us will chime in with our suggestions and comments, and we'll leave it up to Lisa to make the final determination as to what gets incorporated and what does not.
Okay.
So then what is our timeline then? If we are taking the first stab at it and we're supposed to y'all are supposed to edit it and have it nice by Thursday, or we're supposed to have it done like today? the first iteration of it? I just am curious what our micro deadlines are.
Our deadline for your contribution is the 5th.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So
I'm putting in the chat right now what the notes I've taken on what the leads are. If you all could just look at that and let me know if that's accurate. I just want to make sure I document this as we go.
And if, I mean, you guys are working really hard to make the deadline, I would say that, you know, it's this tension between, we have some board members, Julia being one of them, who really likes a lot of time with information to really deep dive into it. And so she wants all board materials on the Thursday before the board meeting, so she can really take your report seriously. You as a CBRC could say to the board, we can't meet that deadline, and so we're not going to get it to you till the Monday. And know that her response is going to be, I'm not going to be able to take your report as seriously because I haven't had the time I need to really digest the information. That's the thing we're bumping up against here, of some board members really want to listen to you, and their way of doing that is to have more time with the report. But if you feel like that's a completely untenable deadline, you can push back.
You know, Ailey, I agree completely. But I also think that it's really hard because we'd also like to look at the budget and have a thoughtful response. So how are we supposed to take the budget seriously if we don't have ample time to do it? I think we can get it done by the date, though. I think we should still push for that date.
Yeah, and I know the budget release was last Tuesday, right? So it's been a week, and that's not a lot of time to be in the budget. It's a very, very tight timeline, because we have to have it passed by a certain period according to state law. So we're always in this really horrible time crunch, and it's untenable. And we're talking about ways to make it a more humane process next year.
Well, based on comments that were made at our last meeting, you shook your head vigorously, Ailey, when I suggested that we might ask for an extension of time. And so let's honor Julia's preference that we'll render our report on the 11th and so on. But bear in mind, you may get some comment at the board meeting based on that whole situation. When I first came on CBRC, the superintendent's budget was presented much earlier than it is now, the practice. And why that was possible, I don't know. But CBRC used to have much longer time to work with the budget than that it's now currently given, and so on. Whether that's COVID produced or what, I'm not sure. The last conversation I had with Jordan, they said that they were kind of looking into what that previous practice had been. But anyway, also CBRC used to get started in September to studying various elements that go into a budget. That has been not followed this budget year, and so on. I mentioned that to the superintendent the other night when he asked me about it, and so on. But anyway, we got the kettle of fish that we got this year, and let's deal with it. And so if the responsibilities are clear for Thursday, and that we all should be alert to chime in with comments and suggestions, and Lisa will take a final pencil to looking at what might be incorporated and what might be left out, and so on. Then I think we should be able to be in good stead by the end of our meeting on Thursday to go into our final meeting on the 10th and be able to give it our final blessing as to what our report is that is tendered to the district on the 11th, the very next day.
So
just, Lisa, you raising your hand.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to circle back on the observations, because if I think about if we're asking people to make some edits, that if Renee and Alona focus on 2, 3, and 4, Roger, are you and or Hobbs willing to look at 5, 6, and 7? That focuses on kind of overriding challenges, central services, and administration of the MAP assessment. Just to help with workload and give people time. Or if there's other sections or if there's other observations that you have an interest in.
Yeah, I could guess I could. Here, let me let you know what I think.
Okay.
What was it? You said 5 through 8?
Just 5, 6, and 7 on the observations.
Okay, hold on.
Hey, Lisa, I'm going to hop off. Can you tell me which numbers you were tentatively assigning me, or can we just throw my name in next to it?
Yeah, I think, Ilona, if you wanted to work, I was thinking if you wanted to work with Renee, particularly on 2, 3, and 4.
You want to touch base, Ilana?
Okay, we'll do.
Lisa, you're referring to the observations in last year's report, is that correct?
Correct. So it's racial equity and social justice, a budget that is squarely focused on investing in historically underserved students, and then the equity allocation of the 8% of the staffing model would be 2, 3, and 4.
And you were asking Hobbs and I to look at which ones?
5, 6, and 7.
Okay, Hobbs, are you willing to look at, you want to name 5, 6, or 7, or you want to look at all 3 of them, or do you want me to take 1 or 2?
I could do 5.
Okay, then put me down for 6 and 7, and
Okay, and then I'll take on 1 and the intro, the full intro context. Okay, so I'll just, on the document, I'll put people's names at the top of the section or the question or observation. Okay, so for Thursday, what we're saying is people would just take just a very rough draft of any edits they would recommend for this year's budget, correct?
correct. And Jordan, if you want to review for everybody how we access everybody's comments, so we're all on the same page. We go to Google Docs, is that correct? And are shared with me Google Drive.
Are you wondering about the Q&A document or the actual report draft?
The observations that people will be making as their homework between now and Thursday.
Yeah. So it's I think you all have access to the report draft, and that's where Lisa is actually putting comments on who's doing which section. I'm going to paste the draft in the chat, the link to it. And then I also put in the chat the notes that I took on who was leading what based on what I was hearing. But if any of that's incorrect, let me know. And then I do want to also just say that as you all have questions that come up, now that you're going to be digging into different observations, feel welcome to just email me every time you think of something. Noberto also had emailed you all a form where you can ask questions, but you don't need to feel pressured to use that if it's not easy for you. Do whatever's easiest, most accessible for you. But I'm happy to collect those questions via email, plug them into the Q&A document, and we'll get those answered as quickly as possible. Yeah. Does everybody here have access to the Q&A document? We're wondering where it is.
Isn't it in the link that you gave us?
Yeah, I plugged it in a few different places. I put it in the agenda. I've sent it via email. Yeah, and all of it is stored in the CBRC drive. So if you dig around the drive, you'll end up finding all of this stuff. But yeah, I try to put it in a few places.
If you get stuck, just contact Jordan.
Yeah. Please do. Please do. I want to help as much as I possibly can. Yeah. I just also don't want to.
You're working from bench tonight.
Yeah. I'm back in the office.
Everything organized now that you have new carpet?
No, I've not unpacked hardly anything. It just doesn't sound appealing to me right now. Yeah.
Well, does everybody have their homework assignment? And then are there questions that anyone would like to ask? Otherwise, I don't see any sense in keeping this session going until we meet on Thursday. But I don't want to shut anybody down if they have questions to ask. I see Gary has joined us now.
I did have no questions, but I do appreciate everyone that is here. You guys are taking on a monumental task with trying to go through this as well with a short time frame. So just wanted to let you know we appreciate you guys, and we look forward to seeing some of your comments and recommendations.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. So I don't see anybody else's hand raised, but I'm an old timer. I don't necessarily see everybody's hands, but I think I have looked once again. I clicked on arrows and so on. If there's no further questions or comments for the good of the order, I think we'll call it a meeting adjourned, and hopefully everybody will be in attendance on Thursday night. And again, those who are able, please follow the board's work session on the budget tomorrow, either in person or virtually. And if you're doing it virtually, I go to YouTube or channel 28, either one.
I'll email it out to everybody too, Roger.
Okay, good.
Yeah, just as an extra. And I'll be there if you want to see my, or see my, I was going to see my face.
I'll look for you. I'll look for you. You know where I'm seated normally. So okay, I guess we'll call it quits for tonight, and we'll see you all on Thursday for sure. So thank you very much for your participation, and look forward to everybody getting their homework done by Thursday. Bye-bye.
I appreciate you, Mom.
Thanks.